we're always trusting something. So then when I think about the idea of self-doubt, it's like, okay, what am I trusting in other than my ability and my permission to just be myself? And I trusted the idea that I needed to sound like something different in order to be valued. I appreciate my voice more and more as I become wiser and more grounded and more anchored in myself.
Welcome to the Anyplace podcast. I'm your host, Robin Nisbet. In this episode titled The Value of Different Voices, I speak with the musicians of this podcast, George Karpasitis, Avila Santo, and ONYILOVE. We talk about our creative practices within a cultural context, sharing from our different perspectives. What do you practice?
So recently, I've been practicing showing love, actively showing love more.
Ashe.
That's been my practice.
Beyond the day-to-day practices of like our physical or spiritual, like meditation and capoeira, I've incorporated gratitude, taking some time each day to write about what I'm grateful and what I want the day to look like.
Yeah, I love gratitude.
Similarly, I've been in a deep gratitude practice every morning and every evening. And for me, even going beyond being grateful for the things that most of us would consider good and pleasant and that we prefer, and even seeing situations or experiences that I don't necessarily prefer or that I don't experience as pleasant, and really dropping into a place of gratitude for that experience, for that relationship, and recognizing that it's teaching me something, that it's helping me to chip away at what isn't me.
Yes.
Beautiful. I've been practicing getting really comfortable with my self-doubt, sitting with it and being with those uncomfortable feelings, and then still moving forward. Who do you belong to?
I belong to this moment. I belong to the circle. I belong to creation.
Love it.
Sheesh. I feel like you answered all of our questions with that one.
That was good.
Yeah, I belong to myself. I belong to myself, amongst many other things.
Right. I belong to existence. I belong to life. I belong to myself and all the different layers of myself. I belong to humanity, I belong to my ancestors, to my blood family, to my chosen family, to everything, everyone, every place, everywhere, every why. I'm just here. So being here means belonging, period. Mm-hmm. So I belong to everything, and everything belongs to me.
I belong to my Ori Inu, my character, and I belong to my Ori Ode, my destiny. I'm so grateful and happy to be with the three of you today. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the music that you made for this podcast. George, you did the original music, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the instruments that you used and your process with that.
Yeah, I think the initial idea as it was described by you for the podcast was a lot related to exploring cultures, exploring traditions, related to travel, to stories. I've always been fascinated with instruments from around the world and collecting them. And so the idea was to incorporate as many of them into that short segment as I could. So in there's congas, there's ngoni, which is an African harp-like instrument. There's berimbau. There's Native American flute. There's guitar, Spanish guitar. So it's a combination of cultures in a musical way.
You're so amazingly talented to be able to play all of these different instruments. And one part of that introduction is the waterfall that you captured that happens to be in Matoha Canyon on Chumash land, which is where I grew up. and where I'm living now. So that was really special.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and that was completely coincidental. I had gone there a few years ago and just recorded waterfalls and the river there, and made its way into this music without us really talking about it. So yeah, I'm glad it worked out in that way.
Yeah, so amazing. And then I reached out to both of you and felt so honored and blessed that you were willing to put your ashe on the music as practitioners of Ifa, initiated into Ifa, initiated as an Iyalorisha of Oshun, Ati Obatala. I mean, you make some of my favorite beats, Awo. Really.
Thank you.
And your voice is like honey. It's magic. So I feel so blessed that we get to be here having a conversation. I thought as a little introduction, we could each share an anecdote or a memory about one person.
I'll share a memory with you, Robin,
okay,
about being in Joshua Tree, or was it 29 Palms? And going out at what felt like 5 a.m, maybe, in like 30-degree weather with masks on in this ghost town, and hearing the ricochets of people shooting their like rifles and stuff in the background.
And then the bombs that were being...
there were bombs also.
Yes.
And the amazing breakfast that we had.
And just to clarify, the masks were an artistic mask, not the COVID masks, but these masks that we were wearing for this film that we were making, this video.
Yeah, reminiscent of like a egungun mask, but not quite that. That was a memory. That was fun. I had a good time then.
I have a memory of you the first time I saw you, Iya. Onyi. We'll use different names, but Onyi, yes. Iya means mother, and it's how we greet people in the tradition when they're initiated. The first time I saw you was in the first Zumbi play, and you were playing Oya, and I was just like, who is this person? I mean, your ashe is so big and you are so beautiful. Like just your spirit and your physical appearance, everything, so beautiful. And taking on the persona of Oya, who is a force. I mean, not just anyone can play that role and dance for Oya, and then your voice.
That's so beautiful. A memory that I have with Avila, I'll start with you, was it Relatos? The production that your mom had put on, because you supported me in playing some music. Was it Relatos or was it a different event? It was a different event, and it was kind of last minute. The event wasn't last minute, but I oftentimes when I'm in a performance setting, I'm really intuitive. So I'm just seeing what is coming up in the moment. And it came to me to add some musical component to, I think, a poem that I was doing or something that I was doing. And Avila was there. And I was like, hey, Avila, can you help me and play, the drum? And I think I had maybe a clave or a shakere or a bell or something. And it was literally in the moment. I just asked you to play with me. And we just rocked it as if we had rehearsed for that experience. And I think it just really brought a beautiful ashe to the piece. But I think it just speaks to your talent, your skill, your ability to just navigate the creative space through music in such a beautiful way that you've been doing the rehearsal your whole life. So in the moment, you're just able to jump in. And I think we both kind of share that type of experience. So we just locked it in such a really beautiful way. So I just
Thank
remember
so
that.
Much.
Yeah. It was really special. George, the Palmares play that we did, God, last year, right? It's so crazy. It was last year?
It might have been 2 years now, almost 2 years.
Was it 2023? It was 2023, right? So almost by the time we get into next year, it'll be 2 years. But for the Hollywood Fringe Festival, doing that play and you being the huge element of the music and the composition and bringing all the different sounds to create the soundscape for Palmares and also to play the music. I mean, the music was a character in the production, and you had such a powerful role in that to bring it all together, to cohere it all together, and also your spirit and your energy is just so sweet and so collaborative and so communal. It just was such a beautiful experience to work with you in that production. So thank you. It's so interesting to me to know that that's when you first saw me, because I feel like, did I not know you before then? Because I feel like I've known you for such a long time and have just seen you and experienced you in different spaces, from kind of the spiritual community collective, at service or in dance classes, or just seeing you around in different ways. It's almost like you've been a fixture in my life in such powerful ways. But the experience that's coming to me to share is when you had given me a facial. I had gone to you for a facial, and I think this was before our trip to Nigeria. And I remember just kind of being under, laying down or sitting down, however I was situated, and just feeling the combination of the strength and precision of your movement, but also the gentleness and the softness of your care. It was such an interesting combination. And I think I was trying to remember, I was like, wait, is she initiating into Ogun or Oshun? I'm not sure, but it was such an interesting overlapping of those two energies. And for me, Oshun and Ogun, they work together, with my ancestors as well. So it was almost like this really beautiful convergence of the two of their energies coming through the experience with you. And I don't know, it just really stuck in my mind of just that strength and beauty of the warrior energy from both of them, but just from different ways. And it was so lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a lot of memories with all of you in creative environments. Oni, I think one of the first projects that I worked on coming here, that was maybe 7 years ago, was a film we both worked on.
It's 93
days about the Ebola crisis in Nigeria, and you provided some vocals for that. And that was before I even knew we had a connection through the Brazil Cultural Center. Yeah, so that was incredible how it goes full circle. And with the two of you, of course, a lot of training sessions together. I remember a lot of mornings training capoeira at the academy. And then with Robin, we did some of your dance projects together, a lot of experimenting and creating. And with Avila, of course, we did a lot of the makele, sound baths, and there was a few other things that we worked on together. I think you mixed an album that I recorded with Winter. That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful collaborations.
Yeah.
And I think that I met both of you actually at the same time in a training session at the old Brazil Cultural Center. And you were both so lovely and so generous and so fun to train with. And I think even in that moment, it sparked I need to collaborate with these two people because they're such beautiful movers. And I knew you were musicians, and it kind of set my brain on fire. I was like, what can we do? And then you've both been so amazing trying out all of the weird stuff that
a lot of shaking.
A lot of shaking, tapping, making weird noises.
Yeah.
It's great.
I was wondering if you would each share your name that you were given in your initiation and what it means.
Yeah, so my name is Ifa Wole, which means Ifa enters the home. That's my Ifa name, given to me by Falolu Adesanya.
Ashe.
Beautiful. And I am Oshuntayo Obatolu, and I have an extra name that was given to me after initiation, like a couple of years actually, which is Ifa Funke. And I'll share it. So Oshuntayo is my Oshun name, and that means Oshun is my joy, or Oshun is enough as my joy, or Oshun brings me joy, but just a very strong connection between my joy and that being how I'm really deeply connected to Oshun and really just grounding in my own joy for its own sake, and also bringing joy to all the spaces that I enter into. And then Obatolu is my Obatala name, and it means Obatala is worthy to be praised. So that's, yes, for me, even the Oshun is, leads in the relationship that I have with the two Orisha. But Obatala for me is it's very important, and the two of them just really bring this beautiful balance for me. And also Obatala was the Orisha of my family on my maternal side before they converted from or away from the ancestral practice. So for me, it's like I'm bringing back Obatala into a space of being praised within our family. And then Ifa Funke kind of came later, and it wasn't necessarily connected to initiation, but I was telling Falolu Adesanya, Awoyade Adesanya, about one of my Nigerian names, because my family is Yoruba and Igbo, and on my Yoruba side is Oluwafunke, which means God gave me to my mother for my mother to take care of me, or for me to take care of my mother. That's the name that my family gave me. And then he said, I'm going to give you another name, Ifa Funke, which means like Ifa takes care of me, or Ifa like pets me, or just, really cares for me. So it just was really beautiful to get that additional name that's connected to a name I already had, but then now from the Ifa side specifically. So, yeah.
And so just to let the listeners know, Ifa is a spiritual practice, a tradition that comes from Yoruba land, practiced by the Yoruba people of what is now known as Nigeria, Benin,
Togo, different
Togo.
places nearby, yeah.
And then this tradition has spread to some other places in the world, into the diaspora, Brazil, Cuba, Puerto Rico.
So many different places.
Yeah, so many different places by way of the transatlantic slave trade. We're not only connected through the spiritual tradition, but also through capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art, and it has a relationship with candomblé, which is the spiritual expression that has its roots in Ifa. And if anyone wants to add on to what I just said.
That was well said.
Thank you, Ifa. In addition to being spread through the transatlantic slave trade, there are so many people who are in other parts of the world, whether they are descendants of Africans or even non-Africans, although we're all connected, who are coming to Ifa. So you have Ifa in places that you would have never thought you would hear about Ifa being in, because people who, find out about the tradition, whether it's connected to their own ancestry or it's part of their destiny, even if they're a completely different culture, and they somehow come to Ifa, that are initiating, that are practicing, that are,
Ukraine. We have some Ukrainians in our
within our actual lineage.
Yeah.
So, Ifa is Ifa and its different branches, whether, the root, Ishe, which is what we consider Isheshe, the source, or Candomblé, Umbanda, Santeria, Lukumi, depending on kind of what part of the world you're in. The more people are really turning to their ancestral practices in general, like specifically their own ancestral practices, or just the idea of practices that are not connected to specifically, let's say, the Abrahamic faiths, any traditions that many people were converted to, many years ago and still today, as they're discovering these traditions and returning to kind of more earth-centered traditions, they're finding more commonality with that than what they were conditioned to believe was the truth from others. So it's you'll find it in so many different places where you would have never thought to find it. So it's really beautiful that we're creating seats at the table for ourselves in, the spectrum of humanity and how we express our connection to the divine and how our understanding of our existence and our place in this world.
And you are Yoruba.
And Igbo, yeah.
And Igbo, okay. And were you born in the U.S. or born?
USA.
Okay.
I'm from the States, and I grew up very Christian. Didn't know anything about Ifa, anything about Santeria, anything about a lot of what I've just been immersed into the last several years. But I was very Christian, which gave me a specific foundation. And I always give honor to, again, all of the practices that have shaped me. So I had the foundation of Christianity from an African perspective, which is different. And so that gave me the foundations that I still hold on to dearly. And as I grew up, became an adult, there were things that I had to kind of chip away at that just were not aligned for me. But in kind of stepping away from Christianity at a certain point, and then really stepping more into just the openness that my spirit has. I'm a Gemini moon, I'm an Aquarius rising, so I'm kind of, I'm out there. But these things like, astrology or all these other different ideologies, I was not necessarily allowed to kind of know about or delve into because of just, the ways that a lot of people practice Christianity. It kind of closes off to some of those other aspects. So moving away from it, I was able to kind of start tapping into kind of a greater world of just how people understand, the divine and spirit and all these things. And it was in an Afro-Latin percussion instruments class in college at USC, my junior year, that my teacher was in his first year of initiation. So he was, wearing all white, comes in the class. I'm like, okay, that's interesting when you see someone in all white. And then wrote his name on the board, wrote Iyawo. He was in his Iyaboraje in Santeria. And I was like, raised my hand. I was like, that's Yoruba. Like, what? Like, I don't understand what the connection is here.
Right.
And as soon as he started explaining, I was like, what? There's what? There's a tradition that comes from the Yoruba people that has these deities, that's influenced all these different parts of the Caribbean, Latin America. It just blew my mind that I never knew about it. And from there, I followed the breadcrumbs. And eventually, like years later, there's so many different threads to it. But that's, I eventually found capoeira, which capoeira led me to our Baba Fashigun, because the capoeira master instructor, Mestre Emin, Avila's father, was good friends with Baba Fashigun, saw Baba Fashigun at a talk, was drawn to him. And then I just kind of kept going. And then fast forward to 2019, was initiated in Nigeria. So just, again, a full circle for me ancestrally of like bringing this tradition back to the forefront for my own ancestors, so that, again, we have a seat at the table, because I have Christians in my family, I have Islam in my family. So now it's like, okay, now let's bring the ancestral practice so we can just have a fuller circle of beliefs.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Awo, you came to Ifa by way of your ancestry on your father's side. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So grew up in Candomblé in LA, but every summer we would go to Salvador Bahia to visit my family. And my parents would always tell me growing up that you're a Candomblé Jew. And that's what I was. It's as simple as that. My mom's Jewish, my dad's Candomblé. My connection to Ifa through Falokun Fashegun. He was training capoeira with my dad, like Iya said. So I've known Baba since before he was doing Ifa. Yeah, or he's known me, but both ways. Yeah, we're family in that way.
And George, how did you come to capoeira?
That was in London.
And will you tell us where you're from?
Yes. So I come from an island in the Mediterranean. It's called Cyprus. So I'm Greek Cypriot. I guess the religion there, as you mentioned that, is Christian Orthodox. My family was not particularly religious growing up. So I felt like my journey around the time I went to college, part of my journey was to explore different traditions and see which parts resonate. One of them that I came across initially for other aspects of it, the martial arts, the drumming, the dance, was capoeira. I saw it at a college I was going to, King's College in London. Started my practice there. The teacher was not particularly involved in the spiritual aspect of it. So he wouldn't talk much about candomblé. I don't think he was very much connected to it. He was more on the physical side. So we would practice capoeira more as a physical practice. And it was later on coming here, meeting your father, Mestre Amen, that I got to dive deeper into the spiritual aspect of it and make that connection. And from there, still barely scratching the surface, but I've practiced a lot of the drumming. We've done some readings, we've done some rituals.
Beautiful. I once heard a lecturer, she came to Berkeley, she was Brazilian, and a queen of, I'm trying to remember what this community was called. They had autonomy inside of the Brazilian government, and I can't remember.
Maybe like a maroon or a quilombo.
Yeah, something, yeah. She was also an academic, a professor, and her name is Leda Martins, and she wrote this beautiful essay on the spiraling of time from the African way that time is nonlinear and how it's made almost like a roadmap in the body through capoeira, because you can see all of these spiraling movements. So it's like capoeira is this very organic, efficient way of moving that uses the ergonomics and the physics of the body in a particular way, like the most efficient pathways. And I also feel like capoeira is like this roadmap, because it's not just, we don't just practice the physical part, but there's the music as well. And inside of the music, there's storytelling. So what might seem like a marineo song, which I feel like is a controversial song because... Marineo. Yeah. Because I think the sao is like pronounced... I don't know. I once heard a debate from two Karpatistas about how to pronounce marineo sao.
The way that I learned it is marinheiro sou.
Okay.
Eu sou marinheiro. I am somebody who is working on the ocean.
And I feel like if you took that song at face value, it would be like, oh, someone's working on a boat in the sea. But there's so much talking about like a bonezinho, like a white hat. I feel like there's messages from Obatala, there's messages of surviving, coming across the ocean. There's so much in that song. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons of capoeira, because it's not just a training practice, it's an educating tool that has these incredible life lessons that any one of us can, once you step foot inside the circle, you're in this dialogue with another person, whatever is up for someone in their life at the moment, come into the circle, and there's always a lesson to glean from that moment.
Yeah, it really is like a school, like you mentioned. What I love about it is like so holistic, like it includes so many different aspects. It's not just the movement, it's not just the music, it's the spirituality, it's all so many different things. It really is like a way of life. We're just so blessed here to be with Mestre Amen and under what he's created here. And it really feels like he created a quilombo basically here, like his own community, and how we all got together in this way to share and to create. And there's so many opportunities to do that within this community, which I'm really blessed to be part of.
And also we should say for listeners, those that don't know, like the origins of capoeira was an actual form of fighting and resisting slavery. So it's a form of resistance, and also an opportunity to, when practicing and embodying this form, to maybe understand something of history in an embodied way, instead of just like cerebrally. And then also an opportunity to ask ourselves, what are we fighting for? And what choices can we make? Because I feel like, too, there's something so playful about it. To see how somebody plays is to kind of, you get an essence of someone's personality.
Yeah. I think it's important to acknowledge that all of us here have a very different relationship to capoeira. It reminds me of the story of Eshu wearing the half red, half black, and people fighting over, like, was he wearing red or was he wearing black? It's both. I have a different experience. I love that the studio and what you said about, the holistic practice of it and feeling like you're in a quilombo. But for me, I don't see it that way. My relationship to capoeira is really around the commodification of it as it's turned into, just like a commodity in the United States and other places in the world as well. And it still has all these things that we're talking about, but that's a lot of what I think about. Because from my dad, it's like he walked out on the street and it was dudes who were playing on the street. And they weren't doing it. I mean, sure, they were maybe making some money, but it had only been legal to play it for, a couple years? Because it was illegal till, I think, late 50s in Brazil to even play it. It's such a complex question. It is amazing, and I know that there is so much that it adds to people's lives, and it gives the people an opportunity to feel a lot of the energy in Afro-Brasileiro, just the axé of being that. So I don't think I have all the answers for it, but it's just something that I think about a lot, and I'm thinking about now.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk a little bit about the ways in which cultural appropriation shows up. These words, cultural appropriation, is really in the zeitgeist right now, and I think sometimes we can rely on the words to do the work instead of actually asking ourselves, well, what does that mean? And these words is the idea that someone is stealing and someone is being stolen from. So no matter what we identify with, I just want to take a moment to drop into the sensations in the body when this comes up, the feelings of uncomfortability. Like I notice my heart starts to race.
Yeah, and you know, about the quilombo piece, it's like, it's both, right? For me, I don't see it as it is, but it also is. And I know a lot of people feel that way. And a lot of people their lives are positively changed because they learn about a quilombo, which is, I hate that I have to translate this, to be honest with you, for the people listening, but you know, these are people who brought independence into their own hands during slavery and broke out of the system as much as they could and were living together in their own ways. But, you know, for the most part, I think about the portrayals of Zumbi, for example, Zumbi dos Palmares, who was the most legendary and esteemed in the Afro-Brazilian quilombo, kind of like historical storytelling canon. But, you know, he got killed by the Portuguese. And thinking about the ways that it's portrayed now and commodified also by white folks, to be real. But yeah, all that to say, it is a quilombo because it has turned into that, you know, and like just as much as there's a movie called Quilombo and we could acknowledge that it's called that, we're also not enslaved Black people in Brazil.
Right.
You know, that had to like run away and start our own government.
I trained capoeira for about 3 years. 15 years? That seems wild. A long time ago. And I remember the first time, I think I was walking by the capoeira studio, Capoeira Batuque, Brazil Cultural Center, when it was on, was it Sepulveda?
Yeah, we were on Sepulveda at one point.
Yeah, on Sepulveda. And this is, again, mind you, so, you know, my history of, you know, going to USC, the Afro-Latin percussion class, and that was my first time playing Latin percussion or knowing anything about just the African diaspora and its influence throughout Latin America, because I didn't really grow up with that information. It was heavily like Cuban based, you know, initially. So I didn't even touch on Brazil. So I was like, oh my God, Orisha and Ifa and Cuba and Spanish speaking people. Then a few years later, then it was like Brazil. And I was like, oh my God, Brazil, Ifa, Orisha. I remember walking in, observing the class, and I think Mr. Men was sitting or standing at the counter. I was just talking to him for a bit, and I remember asking him, oh, I'm curious, you know, Mr. Men, would you describe capoeira as a Brazilian martial art or an Afro-Brazilian martial art? Because there was something very distinctive about the two different classifications. And I can understand both. I appreciate both in two different ways. And he was very emphatic. It's an Afro-Brazilian martial arts because you are highlighting the African influence and the African foundation of this martial art that was cultivated in Brazil. You know, it has its African roots, but then it was, brought to Brazil and then was cultivated in Brazil because of all the circumstances that were taking place. And I found that to be very interesting, and I really appreciated that because, yes, the commodification of it, not even for the benefit necessarily of like African or Black Brazilians, but just for whomever, everyone else aside from us. And then there was also something for me that was interesting because, from my perspective, while I appreciate adding the prefixes to anything as far as like our identity or our culture, there's this other side of me that says, well, if Brazilian culture or any other culture is in fact like heavily influenced by Africans, wouldn't it be interesting to just call it, well, it's a Brazilian, because we know that Brazilian culture is heavily influenced by African culture. So it's like I have this interesting relationship with the prefixes that we use, because on the one hand, I want to highlight them and say, no, we're here and you can't erase this. But then on the other hand, it almost feels like if you add the prefix sometimes, and when the prefix is not there, that means, oh, the influence isn't there. I see things from both perspectives, and it's like a both and, neither nor. So that's where I think issue kind of comes into of like the trickster nature of like how we identify ourselves, because on the one hand we include, but on the other hand we don't include, we exclude through both sides of the description. So that's an interesting thing when we're looking at appropriation. And it's such an interesting thing to look at that word, because part of the word is appropriate. So it's like, okay, the appropriation is like an inappropriate way to inhabit, to express, to explore, to relate with something that completely disregards that thing. So what is the appropriate way to do so? It's like when we give honor and reverence to the ancestors, to the descendants, to the existing people that have been practicing something, that have died for something, that have, their blood, sweat, and tears went into it. What is the appropriate way to engage with it, to maintain the honor? And not to necessarily, we don't have to exclude people from our practices. Like, I think we're all human beings. Again, we're all human beings, and we're becoming more and more mixed. We're all a bit of everything. But it's like, what is the appropriate way to honor something, to ask permission to do something, to perpetuate something that's always coming from this place of regard?
That's so interesting. I really like that. And it sparks this idea for me, because I was thinking about this question around cultural appropriation. I think that we culturally appropriate, period, all of us in this culture. And it's just about the spectrum, as I see it, of, how we culturally appropriate. Are we aware of it, right? Like if I'm choosing to write a song and I want to bring in some merengue, for example, I'm culturally appropriating in how I look at it. And that's something I could live with, but it's important that I acknowledge it, right? And I think that if somebody walks into a capoeira studio with no Brazilian heritage or anything, that's cultural appropriation. In the same way that if I go into a karate studio and choose to take a karate class, I'm appropriating from that culture. But I don't necessarily have this absolute negative attachment to it. It's wound up in all these other things, which, is just a fact of the complexities of living in the time and place that we're in. But that's kind of how I look at it. I disagree that cultural appropriation is always inappropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wasn't saying that it's always inappropriate. I like to look at words, and I like to look at like numbers and things, and just kind of look at the idea of, what is the appropriate way to engage with something or with anyone, not just culture, but with individuals, on an individual level. How am I engaging with you, George? How am I engaging with you, Avila? How am I engaging with you, Robin, in a way that's appropriate for you?
Right.
Because we're all separate beings. Like, we have to remember that we all came here with our own destinies, our own oris, all the things. And I'm coming from my own mind and from my own conditioning and from all the different things to imagine that you are me and to treat you in a certain way without considering, okay, Robin, what is an appropriate way to engage with you? and to give you the opportunity to actually be a co-creator in that. You have agency in that. I have to recognize that you're an autonomous being, and I have to engage with you in a way that's appropriate.
Right.
And we get to make agreements about what that looks like.
Right.
So I think that the conversation about cultural appropriation stems from the idea of people or groups of people engaging with other groups of people in a way that's not necessarily appropriate for that group of people, but you have to allow that group of people to determine that.
Right, right. And we live in a landscape that practices commodification. So it can be very challenging to not engage in ways with one another that isn't like, okay, I need this thing or I want to do this thing. And how do I relate to people in a way that actually takes into consideration, okay, I'm talking to a person, not trying to get something from them.
Yeah. I'm also curious, what are some of the ways that you, if you have found, that you can more appropriately approach a culture so as to not feel like you're appropriating it?
I mean, I think asking.
Yeah.
You know, and you brought up a good point. If you go into a karate class and, you know, you're not from that culture, you go to a capoeira class, you're not from that culture, you're in a sense appropriating. And on the one hand, I can see that. On the other hand, I want to say that perhaps I would use the word participating, right? So we're participating in these activities that are open to and for our participation, because I couldn't go to a class if a class wasn't available. Yes. But now if I, as like a non-Brazilian, forget even non-Brazilian, let's say I'm a Brazilian or non-Brazilian, I take the one capoeira class. And then I'm like, I'm now going to go open my own studio and I'm going to teach capoeira. Right. I have not gotten permission. I have barely trained, no permission. And now I feel that I have the ability to now just take this thing and run with it. Who sanctioned that? Aside from my own ideas.
Yeah.
But it's like that in capoeira would not be an appropriate way to engage with it. Train with semestre for several years, get the different levels of your chords, be, you know, designated as now a contramestre, then a mestre before you even go about like thinking you can start teaching capoeira or karate or something else. You know, what is the nature and the system of this thing you are participating in? Yeah. And are you abiding by the specific system? Or are you just kind of creating your own thing from your own anxiety called I'm rushing, or I want to get money, or I want to get prestige, all these. So it's like the appropriate way to go about something based on a level of reverence, joy, neutrality, and humility. Yeah. From my perspective, kind of cuts through any of the behavior that we've considered appropriation. Yes. Because to me, the cultural appropriation from the negative perspective versus appreciation is, wow, I see this thing that I like. There are these people that have been doing this thing. Let me go to these people and ask, one, is it okay for me that's not part of your system to be part of it? If it is okay, what is the proper way to go about engaging? And let them tell you. They were here before you. Yes. And I think that's with anything, no matter what it is. I think we, in American society, because our country was founded on racism, genocide, negation of specific groups based on just a lot of our ideas and prejudices and bigotry, there is this certain, you know, sensitivity when it comes to appropriation around culture. But it's like anything that's a system, anything that is a practice, regardless of who the practice is by, where the system is, like what is the nature and the limitations of that thing, as an outsider going to that thing, observe, be aware, ask questions, ask permission before you imagine you can just now tap into it and do whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter what it is or who it's from. Like, what is it? If I walk into your house, I don't know the rules of your house. It's your house. Yeah. Let me ask you, okay, what is it okay? One, is it okay that I came to your house? Yeah. Two, what can I do in your house? I'm not going to be treating it like it's my own house. Yes. Do that at your own house. But when you come to someone else's house, whatever the house is, abide by their rules or don't go to their house. Period. Yes. Period. Yeah. To me, it's that simple. Yes. Which it's so important, to come into an establishment and ask, how can I respectfully participate in this cultural exchange? What's the appropriate way to engage? Yes, exactly.
And what's stopping that person who is answering that question from appropriating their culture, even if it's their own, right? And then there comes into question these politics of hierarchy as well, and how that could be taken advantage of, and how no person racially, based off of what your race is exempt from being able to do that, having the potential to do that, and to take advantage of that power. So it's a complicated question.
It's complicated, or we make it complicated. And it's, from my perspective, it's simple. And I think it's more simple than we imagine it is because we've been taught that life is complicated. It all boils down to, are people acting from a place of integrity? Are people acting from a place of good or positive or expansive character? You know, because to me, that's the root of all of it. If the work is like, I want to act from a place of integrity, from groundedness, from anchoring, from peace, from joy, if that's the starting point in anything, if that was the starting point, our world would look a lot different.
It would.
like literally.
Yes.
And then also just to say, you know, there might be a lot of people listening right now who have no relationship or understanding of capoeira or a lot of the things that we're talking about in it. Some people might not know. And we might make mistakes. We might, you know, I've made so many mistakes in approaching different people, you know, or engaging in different practices because I am a part of a lot of different practices that do not come from my ancestry. So navigating that, I've said things or done things that were not appropriate, but it's also okay. We learn, and it's okay to make mistakes. And I think that we also live on this edge of like, you've got to get it right the first time. And that's where that makes it hard to actually see the full picture and to let in a lot of the different truths that can exist at once.
Yeah.
That the humility to recognize that and to really be a student of any of these practices is so important. And like, I believe that culture belongs to all humans. There's a lot of value in taking from each culture, not to steal, but to build onto it, or to, like you were saying, combining merengue with a beat and doing, you know, that's, the music happens a lot. So much music has come to be from this idea of mixing different things, mixing elements from everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess the difference for me is if I positively appropriate a merengue rhythm, I wouldn't call my song a merengue song.
Right.
That for me is where it gets to the appropriation. It depends on how we do it. It's just a nuanced in how I look at it. Yeah.
It's a challenge because of where we are collectively as not just the US, but the world, the globe, that has been so negatively impacted, or that has been impacted by things like, again, the transatlantic slave trade, you know, the Holocaust, the genocide of indigenous peoples, not just on the American soil, but in so many places, because we are still navigating the traumatic impacts of that. That's why things like appropriation and so forth are so sensitive for people.
Yeah, even war, even just war.
All the things.
Period, war.
Everything, every atrocious thing that human beings can do to each other, until we literally, as a global society, recognize we're all human together.
Yes.
We're all human together, learning from each other. I mean, the fact that we have ability to travel physically, but also virtually, like there's no way none of us are not being influenced by each other. Like you have children growing up that are hearing and seeing and experiencing all the different things. No wonder everyone's starting to sound like similar-ish, or, you know, things that, and again, people talk about, oh, if you sound Black or not sound Black, like when you're singing, like, well, we're all listening to each other. We're all growing up listening to the same music. So it makes sense that over time, people are going to blend all the different sounds because we're here together. Culture is created in real time, all the time, by all the things that are influencing it. It's like, what belongs to who? At some point, it's going to be really challenging to know what came from where, because it's going to just be a complete blend.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at capoeira, like, You see what capoeira is in Martinique with damier, or you see it in Congo, just even in like some of the masquerade dances that folks do in West Africa. It's the same thing. You know, it's coming from the same place. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. We're all connected on that depth of a level. And at the same time, I've been able to see, as being a child of an immigrant, in this case from Brazil, coming with music and capoeira and dance, that one's livelihood, and you see this in Brazil as well, is that the culture itself is the industry, especially for Black folks. So it is something that I think about a lot. And although this is something that connects to every person and comes from that root energy, the physical level of it, as it exists in the marketplace, is very specific to a certain type of cultural appropriation, as I see it.
Right. Because you see who can or who's been given the ability to commodify it. But the thing that I always think about, not just with capoeira, but in a lot of other ways, as I'm very African presenting, like dark skin, West African. I'm not what folks would call ambiguous, you know, in terms of racially mixed. I'm a dark-skinned Black African woman. And, you know, the idea of having people that look like me represented anywhere, first and foremost, is always something that I kind of consider. But also in a lot of these spaces that are like Afro this, Afro that, but because of the commodification, there's less people that look like me. In certain places, like I kind of think about that often. I don't let it necessarily like weigh me down. I'm not obsessed with it per se, but I am always, if I walk into a space that's like a capoeira class and I don't see someone as dark as me, I'm always like, oh, that's interesting. It's an interesting thing because as things become more popular and become more in the mainstream, like you see less and less like darker skinned peoples. And it's a fascinating thing for me. So that then the image of this thing becomes these people. But I'm like, but wait, how did the image aesthetically become like white or lighter skin when the original peoples that cultivated it were not all that?
Right.
Or how does the image of Oshun, and again, as a priestess of Oshun, and hearing stories prior to my initiation and still a little bit now of like women or people that have Oshun or lighter skin or mixed or blonde hair, I'm like, but that don't make sense. Like Nigerian people, Yoruba people are not all lighter skin with blonde hair. And that's where the deity Oshun, you know, comes from. So make it make sense. You know, it's like the whitewashing of things. You know, I think that's part of like the element of like, either if we call it appropriation or whatever we want to call it, darker skinned people start to get pushed to the back so that then the image of this thing becomes what we've accepted, again, in this like white supremacist patriarchal society. And that's a thing that I'm always considering, like in many spaces, not just with capoeira, but with like a lot of things, because of the still inherent racism and colorism within the industry and capitalism. It's like what is propelled to the top or is not people that look like me. That's the thing that I'm like, yeah, it's interesting. I don't like that. I'm like, show the spectrum and give honor to the original peoples who look like me. Show the spectrum. Don't open it up and then start excluding the darker. No, I don't like that.
I think it's a part of living in the free market as we understand it now. We're either asked to leave parts of ourselves or to sell parts of ourselves. They're beautiful parts about being on the free market with something that brings you joy and love, but it can't inherently be all positive. It's just impossible. You know, there is something to grieve about that as well. I don't so much think about how to like think I could change that type of thing, but I'm just interested in talking about it, trying to understand it more.
One thing I wanted to talk about was ofo ashe. Ifa ofo ashe is talking about the power of someone's speech, which can be in a poem. It can be how someone has paired two words together that carries a particular significance behind it, or it can actually be in just the way someone orates. For musicians, you're communicating with people that bypasses our kind of analytical thought processes. It hits us in the body so much because there's rhythm and texture and melody, and it's just a natural part of being human is to hear music and want to move. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process with creating work, how it comes in, and then some of the ways you bump up against challenges, or if you ever experience any kind of self-doubt around being an artist and doing and making your work.
Oof. There's a lot in that question. but yes, so about my creating process, as I see it now, it's just an extension of being a kid that was tapping on things all the time. So if I'm tapping on drums, if I'm tapping on a bass, if I'm tapping on a piano, if I'm tapping on my phone, trying to get these words out, thinking of ways to bring those rhythms that I'm tapping into conversation with each other, that's what I think about when I'm writing. I really try to simplify it as much as I can. And I think about my process conceptually a lot more as I'm stepping into making visual art, performance, and conceptual art as well. Although music and capoeira are foundational to what I do, and drumming in particular. Yeah, so it's an extension of the drum, is how I see it. It's an extension of my capoeira practice, which is an embodied thing. It's there's musical elements, movement elements, there's communal elements, kind of like metaphysical elements. And then around the self-doubt with artistry, absolutely. I've doubted myself so much over my life. And I think that being critical, I was just talking to my friend about this the other day. Both of us went to really highly esteemed college, Berklee College of Music in Boston. And we were talking about just self-doubt, both having gone there, and how so many of these incredible artists that we know are so critical of themselves and are so doubtful of themselves at certain points in their life, not necessarily like indefinitely, but at some point. And somehow that being kind of like tied up into having been trained in a certain way, institutionally, because, it's a different feeling of when I'm in a terreiro, for example, listening to them drum in Bahia than how it felt being in concert band in Santa Monica. So yeah, I've doubted myself, and I think that what's been my North Star is looking inward and finding what's authentically calling for me and finding what wants to be expressed and having the audacity and the courage to move from that place, which is work.
I love that you use the word audacity. It takes a certain kind of audacity to be like, I'm going to show up today because this is what I want to do and it's important to me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's listening to something that is there somewhere, and it's a calling. I mean, I've listened to all of your albums. It's a gift.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the self-doubt part is inevitable, and it's a part of the artist's journey in many ways. It's almost like an energy that can be useful. It can be useful because at the end of the day, I feel we all strive to be the best version of ourselves. The questioning of it and criticizing it is a part of it, is a big part of it, an important part of it. I feel what has brought me back to being grounded when that happens, when a lot of that doubt comes, is guess asking the question, is this something that I don't hear out in the world and something I want to bring out in the world? And if I can answer that question with what I'm creating, then it feels like it's the right path. Yeah, I used to think a lot that I had to really dig inside of me to pull out music. What I'm experimenting it with more recently is actually listening more to what's going outside of me, with the idea that we are antennas in a way, and we are receiving transmissions, and whatever is going to be created is already out there. And my job is just to receive the transmission, and it's going to be filtered through me and through my experience and through my practice and knowledge and everything that I've gone through. But it's not coming from inside me. It's actually out there. So that's been a kind of a shift for me more recently in the way that I approach creating being creative. And coming back to the self-doubt part, that's, I feel, a big part of the practice too, is trusting the act of listening and trusting that my taste that I cultivate, I can believe in that. I can trust that. And that is a journey.
I can really relate to what you're saying because sometimes I look to other people for recognition. Do they like this? And I might not always get the feedback that I want in a particular way, or all of that might be in my imagination too. It might not even be a direct response to my work, but just like, I don't think people like whatever it is. But it's ultimately, well, what do I like? And to honor that I like this thing that I'm making. I like this style. I like this aesthetic. That's why I like the word audacity, because I want to be audacious in my tastes and my aesthetics and allow that to really show up.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what we put out, what anybody else thinks about it is beyond my control. So what I want to make sure, what I want to work on is to create the best thing that I can create for myself and for the art itself.
Kind of considering everything everyone has said. One is doing the thing for the sake of the thing, period. Just do it for the sake of doing that thing and your joy versus what it's going to get you, or, the accolades or approval or appreciation or whatever feedback it is that we're considering. Two is that it's not our business what people do with what we put out there. Our work is just to do the thing and to move forward. And we have no idea how it's impacting. And we're all impacting each other like tremendously and deeply. What that impact is, it's not our business. Our work is just to be ourselves. And it's interesting to consider the idea of the feedback that people are giving us, because again, we're coming from our own minds and our own ideas. So we might, let's say we're performing anything, and then we see someone who's sitting there. They don't seem to be moving or anything. And in our minds, we can think, oh, they don't like it, or I'm not. But you don't know, they might be like, this is the most moving thing I've ever seen. And we never know what someone is going through, not just in that moment, but what they will go through later on as they reflect on and process, or what their ancestors are going through in experiencing, through them, what they were witnessing in that performance. So it's getting out of our own ways and getting out of our own minds and not focusing on what other people are doing or thinking, and just focusing on doing the thing in and of itself for ourselves. That is the key for anything. If we allow that to be the case, and we are the most open channel for whatever is coming, for whatever the energy of creativity, of creation wants to express through us, because it can only come through us. Like the specific crossroads that each of us individually is going to output something specific, taking that creative energy that is just all around us in existence. We're always trusting something. So then when I think about the idea of self-doubt, it's like, okay, what am I trusting in other than my ability and my permission to just be myself? I've, in the past, have always trusted in this idea that I needed to sound like something other than myself. When people have told me, and I appreciate my voice more and more as I become wiser and more grounded and more anchored in myself. But I used to, I wanted to sound like the people I was hearing on the radio, or sound, quote, Black, because there's Black people are supposed to sound a certain way and sing these genres. And I didn't necessarily sound that way to myself. And I trusted the idea that I needed to sound like something different in order to be valued. I sound how I sound, which is a combination of my ancestors, a combination of my own ori, a combination of just all the experiences that I've had. And that is literally the voice that is me. And that's something that I get to be really proud of. I'm a singer and an instrumentalist, but my creative energy expresses itself in so many different ways. Because I think a lot of times, again, and going back to that idea of the commodification, right? Because we commodify like music in a certain way. We commodify dance in a certain way. We commodify all these different things because in our society, we've placed them on a certain hierarchy as far as their value, right? Their entertainment value. But it's like my creativity, like when I'm doing a ritual, I'm totally tapped into my creativity. When I'm creating something on my website or like organizing things in a certain way, or I'm posting on social media a certain message or a certain image, my creativity, I'm just creative. When I'm cooking a meal and I'm putting different ingredients together, whether or not I found it in a recipe book or it just came to me, I'm tapped into my creativity. When I'm rearranging my house because certain things are going to energetically give off a certain vibration, I'm tapping into my creativity. So I don't necessarily just imagine that my creativity is only funneled through when I sing or perform or dance in ways that people can witness or observe. That's beautiful too, but my creativity, like everything you see in the spaces that I inhabit, how I put my outfit together, how I adorn myself, that's my creativity. We are just creative, and everything we do, we are literally creating our existence and our experience like at every single moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the more we can tap into that and approach life in that way. And yeah, I feel like being creative or being an artist is a title that is sometimes reserved to performers or musicians or actors, but it's part of being human. I think you have to be creative. You have to, like, we're improvising words right now. We improvise our walk, the way we walk, the way we drive, everything. So the more we can look at that in that way, it makes life a little more magical.
Yeah.
What is your prayer?
My prayer is for peace. Peace within myself, and to feel at peace in moments of my day, enough to be able to count and be grateful for them.
I'm going to share a prayer that I always say when I'm performing, playing or creating music is, may I step out of my way and let the Creator's music flow through me.
My prayer is for us individually and collectively to remember, to know, to ground in and come from our beauty, our power, our permission to be. And the fact that we are here is evidence of that, period.
Ashe. Thank you all so much for...
Do you have a prayer?
Oh, I was just soaking in your prayers. What is my prayer? My prayer is that for those listening, that they receive something that gives them inspiration and a sense of belonging in this world.
Ashe.
Ashe, thank you so much.
I hope that everyone listens, goes to the websites. I'll put them in the show notes, but to these multifaceted, interdisciplinary artists here, musicians, movers, healers, go to their websites and listen to their incredible music and learn about them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. For more information about these incredible musicians and artists, please visit anyplacepodcast.com, where you can find their websites in the show notes. All three of these artists have their music on Bandcamp, which is a great way to support musicians, since Bandcamp gives the majority of the proceeds to the artists compared to other streaming platforms. For functional movement strategies and embodied practices, visit my YouTube channel at Robin Anyplace. This episode was recorded on the traditional homelands of the Tongva people.